We're back. You're listening to In the Oil Patch Radio Show. Our guest today is Fahad Nazer, who is the official spokesperson for the Embassy for Saudi Arabia in D.C., Washington, D.C. Fahad, before the break, we were talking about the kingdom, what you guys have endured pertaining to the drop of oil prices and your commitment, your government's commitment, what you guys are trying to do. We have COVID-19 that has changed the world in how we know it or how we have known it in the past. I want to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the historical relationship that you guys have with the United States, as well as the current relationship with the United States. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So as it happens, this year happens to be the 75th anniversary of the first meeting between the late King Abdulaziz Al Saud, the founder of modern-day Saudi Arabia, and the late President Franklin Delano Roosevelt aboard the USS Quincy in the Suez Canal. And in the 75 years since that meeting, the relationship has continued to strengthen and to deepen and to broaden under both Republican and Democratic administrations, I might add. The relationship in many ways is multidimensional. It has political, military, security, economic, and a people-to-people component. We have done quite a bit and accomplished quite a bit over the years. For one, the Saudi Arabia and the United States worked very closely together to defeat global communism. Our troops fought side by side to expel the invading troops of Saddam Hussein from Kuwait in 1990, 1991. More recently, our troops again fought side by side to expel the terrorist group ISIS from Syria and Iraq. At the same time, there is, as I said, there's also a people-to-people component that I think, unfortunately, gets a little lost. And part of my job is to shed light on that element of the relationship. So, as we speak, we have about 50,000 Saudi students studying in the United States. Now, they're all here, obviously, to attain an education, but at the same time, they have also all taken part from their studies and to give back to their local communities. So they are contributing by working in soup kitchens. They are volunteering to work at senior citizens. Some have actually even taken some time off from their studies to help American communities recover from natural disasters, for instance. That was the case a few years ago after Hurricane Harvey. So these students are in some ways unofficial ambassadors. They treat Americans as an extended part of their family, and they treat the United States as a second home. At the same time, I'm not sure the actual numbers of how many Americans live in the kingdom, but I've seen at least 20,000. And obviously, they've been living there, many of them, for many years. They treat the kingdom as their second home, and they're always welcome. We have a long-standing relationship between our two nations, but I think, as I said, also between our two people, that has been mutually beneficial to both countries. And I would say that not just to our two nations, but it's been good for the Middle East and for the international community overall.
Very good. Well, now here come the more in-depth questions. I think, David, you have some questions pertaining to OPEC Plus.
Yes, definitely. I've probably written 50,000 words about this agreement over the last 3 years, and we talk about it almost on a weekly basis on our radio program. So you can imagine we're curious to hear the kingdom's views of all of this. So I think just as in order to set the stage and kind of review how we got to where we are, talk about who the participating nations are in the OPEC Plus agreement, and why was this arrangement negotiated and formed up during 2017 to begin with? What was Saudi Arabia, OPEC, and the non-OPEC companies, what market conditions were they responding to?
Right. So as I said, if you look back at the history of our energy policy, going back really 40 years, it has been very, very consistent. We believe in free trade. We realize and we embrace the fact that we live in a global economy. We understand that oil is obviously a global commodity, and that there's producers and there's consumers. We always have a long-term view to really all of our policies, but certainly when it comes to oil. So that's why, as I said at the outset, we have always favored the stability of markets and moderate prices, because I think that is good for the for the long-term stability, and it's good for both producers and consumers. In general, we obviously, contrary to what we have seen in the press recently, we certainly don't engage in any policies to damage other economies or sectors of other economies, and certainly not the United States. In fact, the United States is our most important strategic partner and ally in the world. That is also our second biggest trading partner. So in many ways, what is good for the U.S. economy is good for Saudi Arabia and vice versa. And the kingdom has really played the leading role in not just bringing this historic agreement back in April, but we spearheaded the initial agreement back in 2017 between this OPEC Plus group. Obviously the main player in OPEC Plus is Russia. Russia is the second biggest producer of oil around the world, and obviously its production makes a huge difference. And what we have seen, and it should be obvious to anyone who follows global energy markets, is that because of the fact that this is a globally traded commodity in a global marketplace, every single nation, whether you are a member of OPEC or OPEC Plus or even outside of both of those groups, every nation's production matters, and that's why, as what we saw was, you heard President Trump on a number of occasions thank Saudi Arabia and our leadership for this historic agreement, because of the fact that we really went out of our way, not just in terms of the cuts that we have made. We have made, as I said, at this point, 4.8 million barrels a day. Those cuts are actually more than the entire production of most countries around the world. So not only have we done that, but we have spearheaded this in production, and we have been the leader in bringing all these countries back to the table,
together.
Especially Russia, which plays a very important role in international energy markets.
And Fahad, we have to go to break, but when we return, I want to get on the topic of Russia. You're listening to In the Oil Patch Radio Show.
Any business can benefit from advertising to the oil and gas industry, but it's really important to partner with a marketing company that has a proven track record with this growing industry. Shale Oil and Gas Business Magazine is the one-stop shop that'll keep you in front of the customers that you need to grow your business. So let's start growing your business in Texas. Email us, info@shalemag.com.
And we're back. You're listening to In the Oil Patch Radio Show. Our guest today is Fahad Nazer, who is the official spokesperson for the Embassy of Saudi Arabia located in Washington, D.C. Fahad, thank you for giving us some historical background, the commitment that Saudi Arabia has to the United States. Let's talk a little bit about what happened, the temporary collapse in March 4th and 5th. And then I also want to get caught up with the current relationship that you guys have, Saudi Arabia, with Russia. And also, I know there's a lot of questions in here, but this OPEC deal is really important, I think, to everyone. Do you continue to see this will be a long-term type of commitment from Russia?
Well, obviously, I can't speak on behalf of the Russian government. Or what I can say is, obviously, Russia is an important player globally in energy markets. It was an important player in this agreement. There was a phone call yesterday between our energy minister and his Russian counterpart, where both nations committed to the cuts. So I think that's a good sign. And what we have seen in energy markets lately, what we have seen, there's been a reflection in the actual oil prices going up fairly steadily over the past couple of weeks, and I think that's certainly a good indication of hopefully it's a good indication of things to come, and I think that is a credit, I think, in large part to the fact that, we did manage to conclude this historic agreement back in April.
Over the first couple of years of the OPEC Plus deal, it seemed to me that it was really, you talk about moderate oil prices, and it really seemed to us that the agreement was really extraordinarily effective for the first year and a half that it was in place, and keeping the price for say, Brent between $60 and $70 a barrel, West Texas Intermediate $5 to $8 lower than that. But it seemed to begin destabilizing as U.S. production ramped up very rapidly, and that supply and demand curve began to separate again. So, in your view, now we have a new agreement. The first one lasted for about 2 years and 3 months before it kind of temporarily fell apart. Do you think the conditions are now there for this current OPEC Plus agreement and an alliance between all these countries to hang together for a longer period of time before we see similar dynamics come about?
I think so, because I think the corona pandemic has really had, certainly certain cases, a devastating impact on the global economy. Every single nation has suffered because of that. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, the kingdom has had to make adjustments because of that. That has not been good for our economy at all. Obviously, it has not been good for the United States economy. It has not been good for the Russian economy, from what I'm reading. So I think there's an incentive for all producers to cooperate and to work closely to keep these commitments and possibly to increase them. Incidentally, it wasn't just Saudi Arabia that announced that we would be making more cuts, but both Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates have also committed to more cuts beyond the commitments that they made on April 12th. So I think these are all good signs. As I said, this is really a global commodity, a global market in every sense of the word. Every producer has to play a role, and it does seem that there's a realization among producers that every country has to stick to its commitment, and that this agreement will be good for the long-term stability of the market, which benefits not just consumers, but obviously producers as well for the long term.
Fahad, when we get back from break, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about the exporting into the United States and get into that discussion. We do have to take a quick break. You're listening to In the Oil Patch Radio Show, and we'll be right back.
Hi folks, Alvin Bailey here. Did you know Agreco is proud to sponsor In the Oil Patch Radio Show? Agreco has served Texas oil fields for over 10 years, supporting producers with temporary power to get their product to market. When utility power is not available, Agreco is your reliable alternative. They service everything from pump jacks with a single 200 kilowatt unit to massive gas processing facilities requiring 50 megawatts or more. Agreco is your dedicated engineering partner for diesel and natural gas generators, as well as battery power solutions. Call Agreco today at 1-800-AGRECO. That's 1-800-AGGREKO.
Well, welcome back to the Oil Patch Radio Show. I'm David Blackman with Kim Bolado, and our guest today is Fahad Nazer, the official spokesperson for the Embassy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Washington. And before we went to the break, we were talking about the OPEC Plus agreement, and I wanted to now transition over to imports into the United States. And we have had numerous reports here over the last 2 to 3 weeks of a large number of tankers, crude oil tankers, headed to the U.S. from Saudi Arabia. carrying a load of somewhere, the numbers vary between 43 to 50 million barrels of crude oil coming to the U.S. to be refined, which is quite a bit more than the kingdom imports into the U.S. normally. And that seems to have come from that period during March and April when both Saudi Arabia and Russia had significantly increased your production before the new OPEC Plus deal came together. And I wanted to get your view and the kingdom's view on why when U.S. producers today are struggling to find a refining home for their own crude production, why it's appropriate for this really very large volume of crude coming into the United States now from Saudi Arabia. And I wanted to give you a chance to address that question.
Sure. So the shipments in question are actually in fulfillment of contracts with long-term U.S. customers that were concluded long ago. They are not looking for new customers. The tankers will not be arriving to the U.S. market at the same time, contrary to I have seen in the media. The journey to the United States takes anywhere between 45 and 60 days, so the shipments are actually for deliveries in May and June, and will be taking place over an extended period of time. At the same time, these exports will not have an impact on storage levels in the United States, not at Cushing or anywhere else. Perhaps most importantly, it is important to note that the grade of Saudi oil is different from U.S. shale oil, for instance. So it is not competing with the shale producer. And going back to your initial question, the Saudi oil accounts for a fairly small proportion of U.S. consumption, just anywhere from 2.5 to a maximum of 5% of consumption here. So the oil that's coming in, as I said, is a fulfillment of contracts with long-term U.S. customers. This is not. They are not looking for new customers.
Fahad, let me ask you on messaging. What do you think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to send, if they would like to send a message to U.S. producers, because things got a little tense, a month back or so, on this goal about shared growth in the oil markets amongst all nations? Is there a message there from the Kingdom?
So the message is that we are all in this together. We are all facing an unprecedented pandemic. It is a pandemic in every sense of the word. We certainly have not experienced anything like it in almost 100 years. For its part, Saudi Arabia is doing everything it can to stabilize energy markets, to stabilize energy prices, and as I said, we have done that through the OPEC Plus agreement, and we're continuing to do that through going beyond our commitments, and just with the announcement we made 2 days ago, and again, that brings our cuts to 4.8 million barrels a day. And at the same time, I do have to emphasize what we are doing, what the Kingdom is doing through the presidency of the G20, with the convening of a number of meetings with the member states, with the pledging of and the commitment that we have made of $500 million towards efforts that are working towards working on vaccines and therapeutics and testing. These are very, very important things. This is really all we can do at the moment. This is our main challenge. If we can learn to work together, not just the United States and Saudi Arabia, but the entire international community, because it really has impacted all of us. If we get all our resources together to help stop it from spreading, to help people who have it recover quickly, and ultimately, obviously, to develop a vaccine, that will go a long way towards not just helping shale producers in the United States. It will obviously help global energy markets. It will help the global economy recover from this, because it really has had a devastating impact on many, many sectors around the world, whether it's retail, tourism, travel, transportation, entertainment, obviously food, restaurants. People, we are just not living life the way we have in the past. Hopefully, we're beginning to turn a corner, but it will take each and every one of us to do our part, not just each and every nation, but on some level, each and every individual. Obviously, we all have to. The kingdom has put measures in place inside Saudi Arabia to stop corona from spreading, and we've been very successful doing that because we've taken some very stringent and early measures early on to make sure that the virus doesn't spread. And so ultimately, it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to follow the guidance of health authorities related to social distancing and other measures to make sure that this thing stops and doesn't spread anymore, so we can all go back to life as we once knew it.
Fahad, I'm sorry, we are running out of time. We're going to go into break. When we return, we're going to get back on this subject. You're listening to the Oil Patch Radio Show, and we'll be right back.
I'm Tracy Bentley, the CEO President of the Permian Strategic Partnership, an alliance of 19 energy companies located in West Texas and Southeast New Mexico. For the first time in history, our companies have come together with one goal in mind: supporting our community. In 2019, our first full year of existence, we committed more than $30 million to support 6 major initiatives, built partnerships with dozens of community stakeholders, and helped secure an additional $1 billion in state and federal funding for roadway improvements in the Permian Basin. By partnering with local leaders, we will continue to work hard to make roads safer, improve schools, upgrade healthcare, increase affordable housing, and train the next generation of workers. Because we don't just work here, we live here, and neighbors are supposed to help each other out.
Remember this name, Oilfield Experts, to locate any part, anytime for your automotive or oilfield equipment needs. Oilfield Experts' specialty is those hard-to-find oilfield parts for your fleet maintenance needs, and we've been providing those parts and accessories to keep your tools turning since 1965. From the auto repair shop to the pump jack, call us for the right part right now. Write down this number, Oilfield Experts, 210-471-1923. Again, that's 210-471-1923, and visit us on the web at theoilfieldexperts.com. Shale Oil and Gas Business Magazine provides services like print advertising and digital marketing. Our digital advertising services include website, email, radio, video, and social media. Shale also provides specialized web services from website management to search engine optimization and social media management. Visit our website, shalemag.com.
Welcome back to the Oil Patch Radio Show. I'm David Blackman with Kim Bolado, and our guest this week is Fahad Nazer from the Embassy of Saudi Arabia. Fahad, just one more question about the global reduction in production. You referred to an anticipation among the G20 nations and OPEC Plus of 19 million barrels a day reduction. And I'm sure that you and the kingdom recognize that America's antitrust laws literally prevent U.S. producers from forming together and coordinating a strategy of reducing production. However, that having been said, it's apparent to me that U.S. production has already dropped by at least 2 million barrels a day and is likely to fall by that much again by the end of 2020. But I just wonder, in the context of that 19 million barrel per day reduction, what is the G20's view on how much of that is coming from the U.S. shale industry?
Well, so our leadership has obviously spoken with both President Trump as well as leaders in Congress to speak to find a way to stabilize energy markets. In terms of how much the U.S. will reduce its production. Obviously, these conversations are happening at a high level between our leaderships. I'm not privy to those conversations, but what I can say really what I can say is that, and what I've said earlier, is that the kingdom is not only sticking to its commitments, but it is going way beyond its commitments, and it is now, for June, will be reducing production by 4.8 million barrels a day, which is not only the steepest cut of any of the OPEC Plus members, it is also, that 4.8 million barrels is more than most oil-producing countries produce altogether. So it's a very significant cut. We are doing everything we can to stabilize markets and prices. Obviously, the United States is an important player in this as well. It played an important role in concluding the OPEC Plus agreement, especially with its conversations with Mexico. So, as I said, I think every oil-producing country has to play a role in order for us to stabilize markets. But I think we are turning a corner, as is evidenced by the fact that prices have increased significantly, or not significantly, but appreciatively, at least over the past couple of weeks.
Very good. Well, Fahad, we know that we had you for longer than we should have. I'd like to thank you on behalf of David and myself for visiting us here on the show, in the Oil Patch Radio Show. And hopefully we can have you back soon again, talking a little bit more about OPEC Plus. Thank you again for being a guest on our show today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope that we can continue this conversation another time.